Hello, everyone, and welcome to TWC TV as we have a wonderful discussion planned for you today about our upcoming Justice and Peace concert. I am so excited to welcome our first guest, Roshanne Etezady. Roshanne Etezady is an emerging, really as one of the most dynamic musical voices of her generation. Her music ranges from clever and colorful to sublimely subdued. Ettazadi's works have been commissioned by the Albany Symphony, Dartmouth Symphony, Eighth Blackbird, Music at the Anthology, and many others. Currently, she's a professor of composition at the University of Michigan and has been a fellow at the Aspen Music Festival, the Norfolk Chamber Music Festival, and Dr. Ettazadi's music has earned recognition from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Korean Society, Meet the Composer, and ASCAP. Would you all join me in giving a TWC welcome to Dr. Roshanne Etezady? Roshanne, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be with you today.
Well, it's really a pleasure. I've had the joy of commissioning you before, but it's nice to have this commission and collaboration. I want to jump right in. This, as you know, is a historic commission for us, for me, with my first choral orchestral concert with the Washington Chorus at the Kennedy Center after being in the job for almost 2 years. But I'm curious what led you to the Rumi text and why, and how does it, in your opinion, connect even to the Washington Chorus?
I don't know that I necessarily had Rumi in mind in particular when you and I first started talking about this piece. I think when we initiated our discussion, I was just kind of like trying to be open, like when you kind of just open yourself to possibilities. So I was just trying to be open to different types of poetry and texts that came my way. And as it turned out that when around the time when you and I had started discussing this piece, my dad had been he's always been a fan of Rumi, but it was in particular kind of planting that bug in my ear. Consider Rumi. Could just I mean not even for musical purposes, just
Sure.
as a appreciator of things that are beautiful. Think about Rumi. And so I thought, well, okay, we had discussed the themes of this concert, and I went looking to see if there was any text from Rumi that might be a possibility. And so I found this text that I used in the piece "Become the Sky," and while nothing is necessarily explicitly about justice and peace. I think the poem is about um, like so many of Rumi's poems and so many of his works. It's about transformation of self
Mhm.
and like spiritual evolution and breaking through restrictions, maybe literal restrictions, but maybe metaphorical, personal restrictions that we put on ourselves, and the idea of becoming free and liberating ourselves. And I just thought that that was so beautiful. And I loved the idea of just a glorious, open, fanfare like heraldic sound for you starting this concert this time. So I hope that that is what I've given to you because I was
You
very,
have.
very excited to do it.
Would you tell the audience so that they understand just a little bit about the work in terms of forces
Hmm.
and length, all of that? Tell us about the work specifically.
Sure. It's about 5 or 6 minutes. It's not too long. It is for chorus and brass and percussion, which is actually an instrumentation that I've never done before. But it's such a great combination.
It is.
I knew that you had an orchestra on hand for this concert, and I thought. Rather than use the entire ensemble, I thought I'm just going to go into the forces that I think will be on hand anyway for this program and kind of pick and choose from there. So that's how I ended up with this brass ensemble, and percussion is always a composer's dream to write for anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, yeah, and I wanted, and again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, I really wanted to kind of emphasize the brilliant um, fanfare-like quality. I knew that the piece was probably going to be used to open the concert, and so I really wanted it to be a declamatory, triumphant, joyful opening, and it seemed like that instrumentation would be especially conducive to those kinds of images.
Oh, and you have achieved that. The work is called "Become the Sky" for those who are new to what we're performing, and we're loving it. It's a night. What I think I love about it, and I can say the chorus as well, is all of the colors. I mean, it goes in and out of being, as you said, very triumphant and bright and colorful with the brass, and then it's just lush and warm, and you never know. Ooh, she's going here. A lot of color changes, and I'm hoping we'll bring all of that out in a little mixed meter as well.
There's a little mix, like there's a couple of little groovy moments, the even in a short piece that's only 6 minutes, contrast is an important it's an important spice in a composer's in our pantry. So
Absolutely.
in a piece, I mean, I suppose you probably could have 6 minutes of just bright, brilliant music, but after a little while, you kind of become not immune to it. It kind of you just sort of become used to it, and so I'm hoping that some of those contrasts complement each other and bring out their characteristics to the best effect.
Now, this is a question. I want you to sort of rephrase it in way you like, but I'm curious if you were to say what's the single most important feeling you hope an audience member will experience while hearing your music?
In this particular piece.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can start it with I hope our
Yeah,
audience.
yeah. Okay. I hope that the single most prominent emotion that audience members walk away with after this piece is a feeling of hope, a feeling of expansiveness, and a little bit of the feeling of when you walk outside on a beautiful day and fresh air fills your lungs and the sky is sparkling and anything is possible, and you just kind of like your whole body just goes.
Mm,
That's
yes.
what I want.
Oh, I love that. Yes, and we hope to deliver that as well. Now, this is a fun little question, and feel free to take a minute. But if
Okay.
you could describe the work you composed as an emoji, I'd love for you to what emoji would you use? What emoji would you use to describe your work?
It's interesting because I would probably tend to characterize myself personally on the day-to-day basis as like the winky face emoji. But I don't feel like this piece is particularly winky. Um, I don't know that this piece necessarily kind of has like a like an ironic, like you get me kind
Yes,
of
yes,
quality.
yes,
I
yes,
would
yes.
say I think maybe this piece might be best characterized by, I do love the sunglasses emoji. And I know that it pops up every time I wrote the word cool in my phone, but and I think the piece isn't necessarily cool like that, but in the sense of I want it to be bright and brilliant and like get the feeling of warmth and sun on your face. So
Yes.
yeah, I think I'm gonna go with sunglasses emoji.
And as someone who's been living with you and your music for a month, I actually would say that actually definitely does work.
That is an amazing question. I love it so much.
I'm going to change it up just a little bit because I know as we broaden compositional voices, and that's one of my goals with the Washington Chorus, is we call it our Mahogany Initiative, where we bring in women and BIPOC composers to really broaden on the concert stage, especially the classical choral symphonic concert stage, right? Broaden those voices. Some artists embrace this idea of cultural and gender labels. And others, of course, want to completely be separated from that. And there's not right or wrong. It's just, I'm curious, what are your personal feelings about this? And what pressure, if any, do you feel when composing a work as someone who maybe identifies as female?
Yeah. It's a really big question. I think
No.
I am so happy that we live in a time when the barriers to concert music are obviously not completely falling away, but that we're chipping away more and more at those barriers. And I think I'm so lucky to be living in a time when there are so many musicians who are so hungry and curious and excited about music from all kinds of different, from composers from all kinds of different backgrounds. Not even just those of us who are like conservatory trained, but from traditionally atypical backgrounds, from the pop music world and from the electronic music world and from sometimes worlds that are like maybe just peripheral to strictly musical worlds. I think that that's amazing and we're so lucky. I think in the grand scheme of things, um, I benefit from a ton of privilege as a middle class white lady who grew up in suburban America with professional parents. My privileges of race and class um, basically put me in. It basically put me in a place where I could benefit from a lot of things that are that come from being associated with the kind of traditional conservatory universe. I am grateful for the opportunities that present themselves now, and I'm grateful to be living in a time when more and more people are getting these opportunities. I'm also fully cognizant of the fact that I've benefited from all kinds of privilege to be in a position to benefit from those opportunities. And I'm grateful, and I hope that in whatever ways possible, I can be part of breaking down some of these gateways and bringing traditional, what we think of as traditional concert music to more and more audiences and more creators and more performers.
Absolutely. It is important to acknowledge that I feel like we are in a time of transition in our classical music world, and everybody deals with that in their own way. And so I would never want to put words in your mouth or assume anything.
Right.
So I love hearing it from your perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you for today.
Thank you.
I can't wait to premiere this wonderful work and hopefully do it on many occasions, not just here at the Washington Chorus, but we're excited to be able to premiere it. So,
well, I'm honored to have been invited to compose this piece, and I'm deeply, deeply honored to be included on this program, and I cannot wait to hear it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to premiere our next work, Justice Symphony, and to work with this amazing artist, Ms. Karen Slack. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know our two esteemed guests today, you are missing out. Our first one is none other than Karen Slack, who's hailed for possessing a voice of extraordinary beauty, a seamless legato, and dramatic depth. Ms. Slack has appeared with the Metropolitan Opera, Lyric Opera of Chicago, Washington National Opera, San Francisco, Vancouver, and Scottish Opera, and many others. Additionally, she has portrayed a feature role as the opera diva in Tyler Perry's movie and soundtrack for Colored Girls. And some of you may know her from her extremely popular Facebook show, Kiki Conversations, and her work as an artistic advisor for the Portland Opera, as well as co-chair of the Women's Opera Network with Opera America. Welcome, Ms. Karen Slack. Welcome, Karen.
Hello, Eugene.
Nice to actually finally meet. I look forward to actually being in the same together. It's in just a few weeks, so welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Damien Geter, as you know, is no stranger to the Washington Chorus, opera singer, composer, conductor, who has performed roles with the Metropolitan Opera and Seattle Opera, as well as various symphony orchestras around our country. Damien is also an acclaimed composer who infuses classical music with various styles from the Black diaspora to create music that furthers the cause for social justice. Most recently with his acclaimed African-American Requiem and his cantata For a More Hopeful Tomorrow. Would you welcome back Geter, everyone? Damien, welcome, my friend.
Hey, y'all. It's good to be here.
Good to have you, man. Look, DC is just in love with you. We just had you last week, and now you're coming back in just a couple of weeks. Very excited.
Well, I love DC.
I would love for you, I'm going to start with you, Damien. I'd love for you to speak how the idea of Justice Symphony came to be and Karen's connection also to your process. I know one of the things we talked about was how Karen Slack was always from the start of this. Love for you to speak about that.
Well, back in I don't remember when it was at this point because 2020 counts for about 4 or 5 years right now. But I think it was 2018, something like that. Karen and I are always looking for things to do together, and we were throwing around some ideas. Initially, we wanted to do something about Fannie Lou Hamer, actually.
Yes.
And then it somehow morphed into the Justice Symphony, and we wanted to do something that was centered around civil rights era, and this is sort of what we came up with.
Well, I'm in love with the idea, and I see this as America's music, right? I mean, yes, it's from the civil rights era, predominantly from the Black community, but this is American music, and everybody.
Absolutely.
These are songs that every American should know, and I'm absolutely excited about that. Karen, you sing so many different roles and styles. I'm curious if you have a favorite. Maybe you don't. And what do you enjoy about singing Damien's music?
Well, I love singing German music. I love singing Strauss, interestingly enough. And I love, of course, the Verismo style, where you get to stab people and all that good stuff. But I particularly love, as many people know, new music and American composers. I love creating roles because I don't have to be in the mold and the model of whoever has done it before. I am the standard, I kind of sort of like that part. But also the collaborative part of working with somebody who's living is unmatched, like you can call them. Yesterday, I was actually texting with Carlos Simon about something, and I'm always in touch with Damien. Like he's like my other husband, as I always say. And we talk about all kinds of stuff. So, it is, it's just such an honor, and a gift. And I love Damien's music because Damien's a singer.
Yes.
Damien's a magnificent singer, and he knows how to make stuff work, and he writes beautifully, and he's authentically American and unapologetically Black. And that's why I love to sing Damien's music.
You know what? I couldn't have said that any better. That is fantastic. I fully agree. And the singers with whom I've worked all comment about how every line feels like a melody. It's like, aren't we the melody? No, you're not, but I know you're enjoying it because it does feel that way. I'm curious, you're also, for those who don't know, you're also singing the soprano solo on the Ralph Vaughan Williams Dona Nobis Pacem with us. Do you prepare differently for the Justice Symphony versus Dona Nobis? Just love for you to speak about that.
Yeah, well, it's the same voice. I don't get to have as much fun in the Dona Nobis Pacem because it's a different subject matter, of course, and the Justice Symphony is our music, so it just fits so naturally. But in Dona Nobis, you play the angel, right? You play it is the baritone who is the main storyteller in Dona Nobis Pacem. So I get to sing these beautiful ethereal prayers, a Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, grant us peace. And so I am the soothing, calming spirit in this, speaking of war and speaking of death and all of these things. So it's just different. It's a different mentality, but as an opera singer, you have to play lots of different emotions on one page sometimes. So it's
Absolutely.
a fit for me, yeah.
I'm curious, and both of you can answer this, and I'll start with you, Damien. Why do we need a Justice Symphony? I personally, I know I have my thoughts about it, but I'm curious, why do you feel as if we as a world, and just the United States especially, why do we need a Justice Symphony?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of reasons. I think we need a Justice Symphony because it seems like we're always living in times where justice is not at the forefront of certain people's minds. And so I think that, the fight for justice will be something that is ever present particularly in this country. No matter how many steps forward we take, there always seems to be a couple steps back or more than a couple of steps back that we take to sort of counteract all of that stuff. But also, when you think about the music that's in the canon right now, the classical music canon, it's mostly what we know of, Western European white people, right? And they were able to write their folk melodies and things like this, and symphonies and songs and stuff. So for part of my goal as a composer and part of my philosophy as an artist is to insert our culture, Black culture, into these concert halls, because it is American music and it is American classical music. And so I'm just following the tradition of the composers that came before me.
We are in this time right now where we have had in America, we have had two horrific events, between the horrible thing that happened in Buffalo and also Texas. We need to go into the concert hall and feel like we can rejoice, that we can release. And Justice Symphony is that stomp your foot, clap your hand piece. And you can also reflect, with the second movement.
Yes.
And I have another program that I curated called Of Thee I Sing, Songs of Love and Justice. And as I'm going through that, I'm like, you can never, ever stop the fight for justice. You never can take your foot off the gas. You always have to keep pressing forward and demanding justice. But without the love, without the joy, without the humanity, there is no justice, right? And so we have to remind people of those things. But I think this as well as the magnificent African American Requiem is such a important. It's important to admit that it has a specific place in the canon, a very special place. I was telling somebody, Justice Symphony, you can do January for Martin Luther King, you can do February for History Month, you can do it all of the holidays, all of the Americana holidays, all through the summer, Memorial Day, you could do it for 4th of July. I mean, there's no excuse why this piece shouldn't be done.
Absolutely. And I plan to do it, program it as much as I can. I fully agree. Damien, can you just talk to us, let our audience know what they can expect to hear from this work, and how, I know your major work, African American Requiem, was recently premiered. How might this be different than that musically? Obviously, subject matter is different, but just sort of set the stage for us a bit.
I think the symphony is a lot lighter than the Requiem. The Requiem, I feel like, mostly because of the subject matter, but also I think the story that is told through the music is just heavier, I think. To contrast the symphony, you'll hear familiar tunes, but you will hear them in ways that maybe you haven't heard before. So for example, the first movement, Keep Your Eyes on the Prize. I love how you described it as a fantasia on Eyes on the Prize, but it's in 5/8 and 7/8 and all this mixed meter. Sorry, Karen.
I was like, wow.
That's me.
But I sort of wanted to modernize a lot of these some of them are spirituals, but these not Civil War songs, civil rights songs. I wanted to modernize these civil rights songs because the message still is relevant today. Mm-hmm. And then, the tune will mostly stay intact for a lot of them, but for one, I'm thinking in particular, I completely changed the melody.
Lift every voice and sing.
Yeah. Lift every voice and sing. And what was the other one?
We Shall Overcome.
We Shall Overcome. Yep. And even, changing the words of We Shall Overcome, which I can do because it's in public domain, by the way. But instead of, We Shall Overcome someday, it's like, I'm tired of the someday. We are overcoming right now.
Right now. And when I work with the chorus, I'm like, no, this is not a passive moment. we are right now. It's yes, mm-hmm. Definitely my favorite. But either one of you can answer this, but audiences come, they experience these great works, powerful works, that I'm just so curious, how do you think we can move people from listening to some form of active engagement? Is that the goal? I'd just love to hear your thoughts about that. I struggle with this personally as a conductor in programming works. And are we just giving people a chance to just say, I listened to that, now I've done my part? Or I just really don't, I don't have a goal with the question. I just want to hear your thoughts about it.
Well, I mean, I feel like I get this, not this particular question a lot, but the question that I do get a lot is, what do I want people to get out of it? Mm-hmm. And there's a certain part of me that says, I can't control that. So I don't really have a prescribed answer for that. But the thing that I will say is that music has the ability to touch a person's soul in a way that just sort of maybe given a speech doesn't. There's something about the power of music to reach people's hearts. And I think that in those moments, that is prime time for change. I mean, I've heard several stories about how music has touched people's hearts or had them change their thinking about a certain whatever. But it was through music that did that because it touched them in such a strong way. So my answer to this is, the same answer as I had for the Requiem is I hope that people have an emotional response to this that will be the catalyst for them to affect some sort of change, whatever that change is for that particular individual, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. Some people go out in the streets and they protest. Some people have the ability to donate money to certain causes and things like this. So I think that if there is an emotional, or, it could just be the person just wants to sit there and reflect about, how they are in the world and how they interact with people in the world and stuff like this. But if there is the ability to reach a certain, whatever that is in somebody that will cause them to have a response at all, that is in the direction of affecting change, then that would be my goal.
Sure. Love that. Karen, I'd love for you. You have such an active career and such different projects. As you look back on the past year, what stands out to you as your most important thing or impact event that you've been involved in?
Wow. Every time I think about my life pre-pandemic to like now, sometimes honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm better than I was, but when I think about it, it was a very exhausting time, not because of the labor, but because I was learning so many new skills very quickly.
Yes.
On the job training, I tell people I went to school and I learned how to sing very well, and I always on low key advocated, on the people all the time for people and artists, I always say every room I go into, I bring two people with me, either by the name or something, or you should hear this person, or you should work with this person, or whatever. That's just something that naturally is a part of my who I am, But when I reflect on the time, I would say when Mr. Floyd was murdered, and a lot of us were asked to step in, and speak about our experiences in the industry, that's something that really stuck out to me, because we got the attention of so many people that were not paying attention before. And you have access to all of these important people, right? All these powerful people that get to make these gigantic decisions in our industry, and they're asking us artists, all of us, you, Damien, all of us, for help to be better, And so that's one thing that stuck out to me, but also the camaraderie and the artistic development of each artist. Like everybody was just pumping out all kinds of incredible projects. Some people I didn't even know that I didn't even know I could do the things that I was to film, and all of the things and convos and all of that stuff. But so for me, that's the other thing that stuck out, is that artists were like, okay, we're at home, let's create. And I think that many people gained other careers during this time period. So lots of us are really multidisciplinary artists now, where we were not before. And so that really sticks out to me. And I plan on sticking with it. I know Damien plans on sticking with all of he's talk about somebody who took it and just ran all the way to the finish line with it. So I just hope we all continue to understand that we don't need the gigantic institutions. We don't need the gatekeepers in order to do the art. And many of people are watching us create, and they need us versus the opposite of them, we needing them, So I hope we all can continue to lean into that.
If your music was a TikTok dance or the way you perform, what would that look like?
If my music was a TikTok form, legs and hips and body. Because that's how I sing with my whole
I love that.
Soul, so
we'll take it.
All right.
Damien, if you were to describe the work that you've composed as an emoji, what would that be?
If I were to describe the work I composed as an emoji, I would have to say one of my favorites is the smiley face with the dizzy eyes and the squiggly mouth.
Love that. We all can relate to that. Trust me. Thank you both. I can't tell you how excited I am for our work together. Karen, I look forward to actually meeting you in person and sharing the stage with you. And Damien, I look forward to doing it again. Hopefully it'll be better, even better than the first time, my brother.
Yeah.
So I look forward to this experience together. So thank you both. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back again, ladies and gentlemen. Our next guest is Mr. David Woodsworth, who has worked as a teacher, pianist, publisher, writer on music, and promoter of contemporary music and composers. He has been musical director of the London-based Addison Singers for over 20 years and has conducted a wide range of choral groups in many parts of the world. Aside from conducting most of the standard choral repertoire, Handel's Messiah, coronation anthems, the requiems, masses of Mozart, Haydn, Schubert, you name it, and obviously 20th century classics by Britten, Bernstein, Vaughan Williams. He's also known for championing new composers such as William Bolcom, Cecilia McDowell, Bob Chilcott, and others. His most recent text, Giving Voice to My Music, Choral Composers in Conversation with David Woodsworth, is not to be missed. You must go out and purchase it today. And we're so excited to have him speak to us today about Ralph Vaughan Williams and his powerful Dona Nobis Pacem. Would you please give a TWC welcome to David Woodsworth? Welcome, David. We're so glad to have you with us, David. I'd love for you to speak about your connection to Ralph Vaughan Williams and his choral music, and even your performance of his works.
I think I first came across Vaughan Williams when I was at school, and we sang actually Dona Nobis Pacem. We sang Dona Nobis Pacem. Probably not very well, because the choir was okay, but it's a tricky piece to sing. It's a very tricky piece to sing, as you will be finding out. And it completely blew me away. And so that led me on to discover lots of his other choral music. And then eventually, moving along many years, I went to work for Oxford University Press. I was and who published Vaughan Williams from about from the 1920s, I think. And at that point, his widow Ursula was still very much with us, and she was an extraordinary character. She used to visit us in the office. There was a very expensive shoe shop around the corner from the OUP office in central London, and she used to come and buy expensive shoes, and then come and visit and set off my smoke alarms with the cigarettas that she used to smoke. She was a remarkable lady. And so I got to know her a little bit, and I suppose I felt that it was a connection with this great composer that I might not have had. Obviously, he died in 1958, long before I was born. So it was nice to have this connection. And since then, there's always been something very particular about Vaughan Williams that has spoken to me. I think there is a certain English melancholy about it, but also the power behind the notes as well, and especially in a piece like Donna Nobis or Sancti Civitas, or until fairly recently, I think it's fair to say that there's this rather cuddly impression of Vaughan Williams as a kind of a gentleman farmer and a kind of a folk song collector and all this, and that rather hung around his neck for a long time.
Yes.
I think that changed probably at the last big anniversary, 2008.
Yes.
At the 5th anniversary of his death, and suddenly Tony Palmer made a fantastic film about Vaughan Williams' life, which you really must see, and O Thou Transcendent, which is a fantastic film. And people's perception of him started to change. There's a lot more to him than the cuddly folk song collector. He was at fault through this because he used to say that he was an amateur and his technique wasn't very good, but this was all a cover, I think. He was incredibly insecure, and I think this was a cover for a deeply sensitive and committed artist. Because there's one thing you can say about him: the technique is there. My goodness, from every point of view.
Yes. Can you give folks a sense of the context of this piece as it relates to his life and his views on war? I'd love for you to just give us, if someone has never heard the Dona Nobis Pacem ever before, can you set the context for us a little bit?
Well, it comes from a busy period in his life when his musical language did change quite a lot. I think this was in the late 20s through the 1930s, and pieces like the Fourth Symphony, which is really quite an angry piece, come from there. Another big and wonderful choral piece, Sancta Civitas, comes from that kind of period as well. And Vaughan Williams was involved in the First World War. He was too old to enlist, but he volunteered, which is, from what I've read, very characteristic of the man. And he got a job as driving ambulances and in the trenches in Flanders during the First World War. His job basically was to pick up the injured, or frankly, pick up bits of bodies on the Western Front. Now that is going to have an effect on anybody, of course it will, and that stayed with him. The net result of that, firstly, was the Pastoral Symphony, which is not all about kind of little lambs jumping over a gate. It's a very kind of profound meditation on war and loss. And I think in the 1930s, what was happening in Europe at the time makes it clear that why this piece came about. Having just gone through one terrible war, it was clear that probably another one was coming up. And so this piece, I suppose, in the same way that Benjamin Britten did with his War Requiem, which was 30 years later, this is a sort of a warning, I suppose, against the terror of war, and it shows an incredibly impassioned and actually quite violent side to Vaughan Williams' character, because there's a lot of violence in the music, but there again, why wouldn't there be? Setting those particular texts, and for me, it's one of his most personal pieces, I think, because all his despair, I suppose, comes through, I think, in the music, and the extraordinary way that he sets those equally extraordinary words of Whitman. It doesn't mess about. He really goes for the solar plexus, and it's a hugely dramatic and impressive piece.
It is. And I think the thing for me is that every word that we sing about, you can hear it. The incredible connection to the text painting is simply brilliant. I'm curious, but I have many favorite moments. Love for you to talk about one or two of your favorite moments in the work.
Gosh, it's difficult to pick out individual ones. I mean, I think the ending is extraordinary. It's that almost enforced optimism that we get in the last pages, which is all very jolly, allegedly, with lots of kind of tinkly percussion and all the rest of it. And it reminds me a lot of Let All the World Did Live Recall the Sing, the last of the mystical songs. But the way that all sort of falls apart, there's a long kind of decrescendo, and everything literally slowly collapses, and we get that extraordinary sound of the a cappella choir. Now they're singing in C major, which normally is quite a cuddly chord, but because it's pitched so low in the voices, it's incredibly unnerving.
Yes,
and it's not comforting at all. No. And then the soprano solo has the last word by singing those E naturals. So it's questioning, I think, and tentative. It's not really positive at all. So I suppose that would be one, and the other is the extraordinary setting of the Dirge for Two Veterans, but which actually comes from a lot earlier. He wrote that in the 1914, 1915. And again, the subject matter and the father and the son being in the same grave and all this kind of. I mean, the text is devastating, but what he does with it musically, and of course the terrible, awful thing about all this is that the piece is still relevant. I mean, if it isn't relevant today, then when is it not?
I think that's the hardest part. I mean, when I programmed this piece, I actually had no idea, obviously, what we would be doing.
No, of course not. No.
And I think, it's almost harrowing. It's frightening to what we're in the middle of right now.
Well, the text of beat drums, where it goes on about families being separated and about people going about trying to go about their daily work, and it's just appalling.
It just depicts the utter loss. I think for me also, that's what's so moving is how, when I think about how much of an advocate he was for the music making of ordinary people. I love that quote. And I've been working with this community chorus and thinking about his love for amateurs, professionals, everybody together, that, really there should be no separation, right? Between music making. I think that's also what draws me to him, because that he has such a love for all musicians, whatever that may be, from child to amateur to professional.
That's right. I mean, he was still flogging himself to death, literally conducting the Bach Passions in his early to mid 80s. With the Leith Hill Festival Chorus, which is the big festival that he directed for years down here. He was still doing that. Yeah. I mean, he didn't have to do that. He was the grand old man and at that time, but it was something he wanted to do, and it was something he felt very strongly. And you're right through his life, whether it was working with, collecting folk songs in the fields, or writing hymn tunes to be used in church, or writing for amateur choirs or children or whatever. There's and it's all sincere. It's all absolutely honest and straightforward, and you feel that he really means it.
Absolutely, and you can hear it. I'm glad we've gone away from sort of pigeonholing him into this just nationalistic category.
Yes.
I love that now, as you said, he really carries the weight of an eclectic, full range composer of all styles. I'd love for you to just briefly talk about, why does peace matter today? How would you answer that question if you were asked that?
Why does peace matter? Goodness, it always matters, and I think the warning flags that artists of all kinds put up, and they're still doing. We've just said Donna Nobis Pacem is so relevant now. Peace is so important. We've just got to get on. There's no future, whether it's what's happening in the Ukraine, or the divisions that I know we've got in this country, and the divisions I know you've got in the United States. It all boils down to the same thing. We have to somehow find a way of getting on, and however despairing the world may seem, and goodness me, sometimes it does seem fairly despairing. We've just got to find a way somehow. We've got to find a way. We've got to find a way to live together and respect each other. And I think Vaughan Williams is the great example of that. Of any artist. For my money, and I get into trouble sometimes for saying this, but I think he is the greatest British composer. And I know that I get into trouble from people that say, well, what about Benjamin Britten and what about Edward Elgar? But I think in the range of what he did, he really is up there for me.
Yes. And he is for me as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of all of the other two as well, but
yeah,
he's definitely one of my favorites. And this is my first choral orchestral concert with the Washington Chorus. There's a reason Vaughan Williams is there.
Yeah.
So now we're going to lighten it up just a bit. And I'd love for you, I'm going to ask the question, and when you answer it, if you could say the question in your answer. Okay. So do you know what a TikTok is? Do you use TikTok a bit?
Do I know what TikTok is? I know what it is. I don't use it at all. I'm a bit of a Neanderthal when it comes to things like that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to change the question a little bit if you don't know about TikTok. What about emojis? Are you familiar with emojis?
Yeah, I can do emojis. Yes, I can do that.
Okay. So if you were to describe your own personal music making as an emoji, what would that be?
Oh, goodness me, that's a hard question. It might be a combination. I suppose.
But remember to say the question as you answer it.
Okay. That's difficult, isn't it?
So if I were to describe my work, then
right.
There's a difficult question. I'm not gonna lie.
It is a difficult question. I wasn't expecting that.
I didn't come up with it. This is a team question.
Oh, I might have guessed. Yeah. I've got a rough idea of emojis. Let me think. Well, okay. My music making is an emoji, and I don't want this to sound too sentimental, but I suppose the figure with the heart, I think.
I love that. I would ask you why, but if you so choose.
Sure, yeah.
You make music making with your whole heart, and I love that. That's good.
Yeah. I think so. I try to. I mean, one can only try.
I love that. Well, David, I never forget meeting you years ago as a student at the University of Michigan, and it's so nice to be colleagues, and I hope our paths cross again, not just in an interview. We both have now. You've interviewed me, I've interviewed you. I'm hoping we can make some music together at some point.
That would be great. That would be lovely.
We hope you feel inspired, encouraged, challenged. We hope you've ever even had a chance to ponder on a few things after hearing our guests speak about this concert, this very important concert, and this music. You don't want to miss this performance on June 12th. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Come experience Justice and Peace with the Washington Chorus Sunday, June 12th, 5 p.m. at the Kennedy Center Concert Hall. You'll feel incredibly inspired, and you don't want to miss it.